What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. We've got another combine edition of Next Pats for you. Very excited to chat with you all here from Indianapolis. I'm once again at the Indianapolis Convention Center, and we just finished up hearing from Executive Vice President of Player Personnel for the New England Patriots, Eliot Wolf. And he had some really interesting things to say. Not sure what the appetite is for Patriots fans to actually hear from Eliot Wolf. And I get it to some degree. You're not happy with how the roster was constructed last offseason, nor should you be. But I did find it interesting that on the outset of his conversation with mostly local reporters at the podium here in Indy, he took accountability for how things went last year. And when it came to the roster, that was on him. And he said he shared in the frustrations and understood the frustrations of the fans. And he is clearly going to be here to try to work it out and rectify the situation with Mike Vrabel. In what capacity? That to me was the question coming into our back and forth with Eliot today. And he made it very clear. When it comes down to it, at the end of the day, he is the one who has final say on the Patriots 53-man roster.
Just to clarify, do you have final say on the 53-man roster?
Ultimately, it's my final say. But again, Mike said it yesterday. Mike wouldn't have taken this job, and this is something we talked about in the interview process. Mike wouldn't have taken this job if we weren't comfortable with each other. There's not going to be Mike's guys or Eliot's guys. They're going to be Patriot guys, and we're excited to share the vision to work together to improve the roster.
Interesting, in that just 24 hours ago, Mike Vrabel indicated to us that he was very comfortable with the decision-making power that he has here in New England. When I asked him who has final say on the roster, he said he wouldn't be here unless he was very comfortable with his ability to make an impact on the roster. That is very clearly not an answer to the question. Very well-crafted and carefully crafted answer from Mike Vrabel there, because he knew the answer, which was no. He doesn't have final say on the 53-man roster. It's actually Eliot Wolf. Eliot Wolf obviously had that power last year when Jerod Mayo was with the Patriots as head coach, and so that has carried over and bled into 2025. Now, why is this significant? Why do we care? Because Eliot Wolf is simply going to do whatever it is Mike Vrabel tells him to do, right? Here's how I'm approaching it. I believe that because of the way the personalities are in the Patriots front office, that they are going to get along and there is going to be collaboration. And if Mike Vrabel really wants something, my guess is he's going to be able to make that case to Eliot Wolf. And my guess is they are going to, if not go with Vrabel's choice, be able to find a happy medium that satisfies both parties. I believe, again, because of the way, especially that Eliot Wolf is wired, he does not seem like the kind of person who is, as he put it in today's press conference, going to force a player on any coaching staff, nor is he going to go belly to belly with Mike Vrabel in the draft room or in the free agent meetings prior to free agency about what their priorities and their choices should be. It's just not who he is. If you had somebody else in there, maybe that kind of interaction would be a concern. However, I will say this. While on the one hand, I believe that in practice, Mike Vrabel will essentially be able to mold this roster as he sees fit. For it to be in writing that Eliot Wolf has final decision-making power on the 53-man roster, to me, is significant. These guys have contracts for a reason. These things are in writing for a reason. This was no accident. If the Patriots didn't want it in Eliot Wolf's contract, that he had the ability to control the roster, they could have done one of two things. They could have had it removed when they made the move away from Jerod Mayo and to Mike Vrabel. And if they wanted to give it to Mike Vrabel, they could have tried to do that. Now, would that have been easy? Probably not. If I'm Eliot Wolf, I'm saying, no, we signed a contract. This is in my contract. I'm not willing to move off of that spot. Well, then that would have maybe forced the Patriots' hands to execute option number 2, which is fire Eliot Wolf. And they obviously didn't want to do that. They think he's a smart person. They're paying him. He is under contract. And so they're keeping him around, and they're keeping the contract, it sounds like, the same as it was last year, based on what we heard today. And the reason I say this is significant is because it does open the door, not to sound the alarm, not to raise a red flag or hit the panic button. Not doing any of those things here. But I do think here on this podcast, we can have an intelligent, rational conversation about this thing and the dynamics involved. Having Eliot Wolf have power over the 53-man roster does open the door for organizational tension. There's no question about it. Eliot Wolf is somebody who I think you could look at and say is in some ways playing for his job, so to speak. Given that there was so much uncertainty this past offseason. And if it looks like they have another offseason where there are swings and misses on the personnel side, that's going to fall on Eliot Wolf. He's going to be the one, to in all likelihood, no longer have a job. They're not going to move off of Mike Vrabel because of a bad draft. And the reason that it is interesting, and it's worth pointing out that Eliot has the 53, is because if he sees Mike Vrabel wanting to make decisions that to him don't make sense, how willing is he going to be to go along with those? If he knows it's his job at stake and not Vrabel's. Again, the personalities being what they are, I'm not sure I envision a lot of intense pushback from Eliot Wolf on Mike Vrabel. It's easy to say. But if he has been in some ways backed into a corner professionally here, and this is a make or break off season for him, would he not flex that roster construction power that he has contractually in order to do what he believes is what's best for the team? And thereby what's best for his job security moving forward. It's human nature. And it's what he should be after. He is desperate to have a good offseason that yields good results and that leads to the Patriots improving drastically in 2025. If Mike Vrabel wants to do something that he doesn't think is going to yield those kinds of results, how do you think he's going to react? As passive as he may be and as big a personality as Mike Vrabel may be, shouldn't there be some tension there? Shouldn't there be some pushback there from Eliot Wolf? Wouldn't he maybe look at it and say, I know Mike Vrabel is a really smart guy. He's been around the league for a long time, and he clearly has an idea of what he wants in a player. But Mike Vrabel also took over a roster in Tennessee that was ready to go, that was pretty good. And over time, that thing devolved. And so while Mike Vrabel is already relatively early in his head coaching career, an accomplished head coach, former coach of the year, had some postseason success. While he's done all those things, is there anything that Eliot Wolf should look at to suggest that he's an incredible executive? And now you listening to this could say, well, he could look in the mirror and say the same thing about himself. And that's true, but he's the one with the contract that says he has control of the roster, not Mike Vrabel. I also would just add this. General managers, generally speaking, and general managers and former general managers will tell you this. Thomas Dimitroff alluded to it when he was on the Expats podcast on Radio Row just a few weeks ago. General managers, when they fail and they lose their jobs, generally speaking, don't get a second chance. Head coaches often do. Head coaches often do. An owner looks at whatever situation a head coach was dealing with. If Pete Carroll with the Jets, Pete Carroll gets brought on with the Patriots. Pete Carroll got a third try. He's on his fourth try now. And he's a great coach. He's a Hall of Famer. He should. Bill Belichick got multiple cracks as a head coach. General manager, it's a little different. And if you flame out, odds are the trends seem to be that you're not going to get another shot. And Eliot Wolf would know this as well as anyone. So again, when you have that control over the roster written into your contract, and not only your current job is at stake, but your future as a chief executive may be at stake as well. Do you not speak up when you disagree with the head coach who has strong opinions? I think that's a fair question to ask. And the reason why this is of interest, obviously, those of you of a certain age will remember it clear as day. I don't in real time, but I've read and heard enough about it now to remember the Bill Parcells era. And Bill Parcells did not have control over the 53-man roster, but it was Bill Parcells. So do you think anybody was pushing back on Bill Parcells? No, like somebody else had it. Bobby Greer had it. They were going to do what Bill Parcells wanted them to do until they didn't. And it became kind of a big deal, if you'll recall. And so while I don't foresee it being a major issue right now, and I don't foresee these personalities clashing, it is worth raising these questions because you are inviting that kind of tension, just given all of the dynamics involved. The offseason Eliot Wolf had last year, his perceived job security, Mike Vrabel's personality, what he may want, the fact that this is an arranged marriage, that Eliot Wolf comes from a very specific lineage when it comes to the executive tree off of which he has sprouted versus Mike Vrabel and his NFL history and his background. And so it's, to me, an interesting topic. And I don't just brush it off as, well, yeah, Eliot Wolf technically has roster control, but we all know Mike's going to do what Mike wants to do because there are so many other dynamics involved here. I find it fascinating. And right now, again, they're undefeated. They haven't had to make a single decision yet. And my understanding is it's going great behind the scenes in the front office. Everybody's working together. Everybody's getting along. There is a unified vision. There is clear direction. Mike Vrabel has made it clear what he wants and what he's interested in when it comes to roster building. And I'm sure Eliot Wolf, it's in his best interest to give the coach the players that he needs to have success on the field. And so I want to be clear that I'm not reaching for that panic button. But I also want to be clear when I say contracts matter, language matters, power dynamics in the NFL. We just saw it in Tennessee with Mike Vrabel. He was the same big personality in Nashville that he is here in New England. You know who didn't have roster control in Tennessee? Mike Vrabel. You know what led to problems in Tennessee? Roster control. You saw John Robinson get fired and Mike Vrabel soon thereafter because of tension that led to clashes, that led to disagreements, that led to organizational failure. So I'm not predicting that for the Patriots, but I am saying it's something we should pay attention to. That being said, a couple of other interesting notes from Eliot Wolf's press conference that I think we should point out here on Next Pats. Number one, he envisions improvement moving forward for Ja'Lynn Polk. Here's what he had to say about Polk and why it didn't work for Polk in his rookie season.
How do you explain Ja'Lynn Polk's lack?
Yeah, I think like I don't hate to use this analogy, but like in the Dark Knight when like it's the hero you need isn't the hero that you have. Like he was a young player that came in and he's mature, he's smart. I think organizationally we maybe put too much on his plate early, and I think that really kind of stunted his growth a little bit. And he's aware of that, and we've talked about it. And he's going to continue to work hard and rehab and do the things that are necessary to improve.
It's interesting that Wolf points out that they might have given him a little bit too much because it was my understanding all the way back in the spring that they had given him a lot and they were thrilled by what he had showed them at that point in the year, that he was already picking it up, that he was an intelligent guy, that he was already learning all three receiver positions and he was grasping it and he was having really no issues. And there was a lot of confidence coming from Polk as well that he understood exactly what was being thrown at him. And then the walls came crumbling down. And it's hard to pinpoint exactly why or when or what the impetus was. But it was right around the time where Jacoby Brissett targeted him in the back of the end zone and he didn't get that second foot down. And then he was arguing with the officials and he was very demonstrative in his complaining and he was emotional after the game and he still didn't understand why it wasn't called a touchdown. And he's pointing at the Jumbotron and oh my God. Really after that, his season fell apart. So can they put the pieces back together for him in terms of his confidence, in terms of his mentality? Can they give him an appropriate amount when it comes to the workload so that he is confident in what he's supposed to be doing out there? Those will all be challenges for Josh McDaniels as he tries to get more out of Ja'Lynn Polk. Last thing from Eliot Wolf that I wanted to highlight, this is receiver related as well, but I thought it was interesting just in terms of the layout of the draft. He, like Mike Vrabel, said today that ideally they would love to address all their needs in free agency so that they can just take that best player available with that 4th overall pick. And in an ideal world, that's what you would do. I don't know how realistic that is given all the holes on the Patriots roster right now, but it's something to shoot for. Put it that way. When it comes to rounding out the receiver room, though, and we talked about in the previous podcast, just how much buzz there is surrounding Pop Douglas here, which has surprised me a little bit. But a lot of love for Pop Douglas here in Indianapolis from other clubs, watching from afar, scouting from afar. And so maybe they don't need 3 new receivers. I still would argue they might need 2, and certainly a number 1. But when it comes to the draftable receivers this year, there's a certain area in the draft where it looks like you might be better off investing as opposed to others. Let's listen to Eliot Wolf on the receiver draft class.
I think it's okay. Again, I think this draft is probably a little meatier in the middle than it is, at the top in a lot of ways. I think the receiver position is probably reflective of that as well. So, there are some players up there that I think, not only up there, but throughout the rounds that can help us.
So what does that mean? That meet in the middle rounds when it comes to the receiver position? It might mean no thank you on Tet McMillan, who is really not expected to run all that fast here in Indy this week. And will be interesting to see where he ultimately lands based on how he moves in Indianapolis. It may mean no Luther Burden III out of Missouri, who to me looks like a great athlete, looks like a great run after the catch kind of player. But Eliot Wolf acknowledging that you might be better off in the middle rounds attacking that position would make it seem like those guys that are sort of borderline first would be the kinds of players that he's not all that interested in investing in. And remember, go back, we've done this in the past, but when we're talking about that Green Bay Packers tree, they generally speaking don't invest in receivers in the first round at all. Now, we're going to hear from Dane Brugler a little bit later in the podcast here. Fantastic interview, as always, here in Indy. And he's going to give you a name or two when it comes to that middle tier crop of receivers. We have some other interviews a little bit later in the week coming at you that I think are going to further solidify that this is a pretty interesting day 2 into day 3 wide receiver draft class. But whether it's Trey Harris from Ole Miss, Isaiah Bond from Texas, Jack Betch from TCU, who was the MVP of the Senior Bowl and had an incredible Senior Bowl and a really emotional week soon after the passing of his brother, Jalen Royals from Utah State, Jaden Higgins from Iowa State, Jalen Noel from Iowa State. Some really interesting names. Kyle Williams from Washington State. I think when you're talking about the meat of this draft class at that all-important position for the Patriots, a position that they desperately need help. Those are some of the names you might be talking about. You're going to learn more about those names from experts like Dane here on the Next Pats podcast very, very soon. Let's get to the Combine Buzz, Combine Scuttlebutt portion of the program, if you will. I prefer Buzz, I guess. I think, Scuttlebutt implies rumor, implies maybe not to be believed. So let's go with Buzz, because I do have some receiver buzz. You're talking about Travis Hunter. there are a number of different evaluators here who feel as though there is a very real chance that Travis Hunter makes it all the way to the Patriots at pick number 4. Their thinking being there is a real chance that the NFL likes Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders enough. The Browns and the Giants specifically would like those 2 quarterbacks enough to take them inside the top 3. And if Abdul Carter goes 1 overall to the Tennessee Titans, then ipso facto, you get the Heisman Trophy winner, Travis Hunter, falling to the New England Patriots. So that is buzz item number 1 when it comes to Travis Hunter. People believe there is a very real chance that he could make it to the New England Patriots. Buzz item number 2 when it comes to Travis Hunter. The love for him at the wide receiver position, when you talk to offensive coaches, is off the charts. From the people I've spoken to, which would include one AFC receivers coach, is that he's the best receiver in this year's draft, and he has legit number 1 receiver in the NFL kind of upside. The comparison that was given to me was Devontae Smith because of the ball skills. The hands are so tremendous. The tracking is out of this world. If it's in his area, he has this incredible ability and these incredible instincts to just make sure that he is the one to go and get it. And imagine what he might be able to do if he focused on that position even more than he was able to at the college level because he's playing both sides of the ball. All kinds of love for Travis Hunter. And the Devontae Smith comp to me is a really interesting one. Obviously, he's a skinny guy. But that's not where the comps start. It's the hands, it's the tracking, it's the playmaking ability. He might not have that Tyreek Hill kind of speed, but I think Travis Hunter is probably even more of a threat than Smith is in the open field. And so fascinating connection to draw between, does he make it to 4? And if he's there, can the Patriots convince him to go full-time on the receiver side? If he really wants to play both ways, maybe you could figure out a way to work him in on the defensive side. I still believe most teams have him primarily as a corner who could moonlight as a receiver. I think that's just the easiest way for them to envision it, and he is a dynamite cornerback as well. And I'm not saying that he is not a better corner than he is a receiver. All I'm saying is you talk to offensive people, they watch this kid and they salivate. Something to think about for a team that is obviously in need of a true number 1. And could you imagine that combination, Drake May and Travis Hunter, for the foreseeable future? I know Drake May did an interview during the Pro Bowl. He was asked who's going number 1 overall. He said Travis Hunter. So it feels like there's a little bit of respect, at least a little bit of respect, if not a lot of respect, for Travis Hunter's game coming from the Patriots quarterback. Secondary buzz item. Let's talk about this free agent class again, friends. You're not going to love what you hear. It's hard to find execs to say much positive about this free agent class. And so knowing that I'm somebody who covers the Patriots, they say something approximating the following to me. Boy, the Patriots have a ton of money. But who are they going to spend it on? The inference being, going back to the old car metaphor that Mike Vrabel used on Tuesday, which is, hey, sometimes there's only one car on the lot that you really like, and so you might be willing to overpay to make sure you get it. Well, what if you get to the lot and there aren't any cars that you like? It feels like it's that kind of free agent class for the New England Patriots, unfortunately for them. And that's from multiple high-level executives who also have teams or are working for teams who have money to spend. Not to the same level as the Patriots. They're number 1 on that list. They have that distinction. But it's ugly out there, friends, especially where the Patriots need help. Said this on a previous podcast, but receiver, tackle, thin, corner, safety, linebacker, you're in pretty good shape if you need one of those. Patriots could use a little bit of everything, don't get me wrong, It's just those positions to me don't feel like game changers. Now, what do some really smart minds believe the Patriots could do? Where could some of that money go at least? If it were up to them. I'm talking about my friends Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson from the 33rd team. Check the Mike podcast, doing a great job over there. They are here in Indy as well, and they've put together a $100 million plan to fix the Patriots. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. They're starting with Ronnie Stanley. They're believing he's going to get to free agency. Said this on yesterday's podcast. Saying that you want to re-sign Ronnie Stanley is one thing. Actually signing him, putting pen to paper, is an entirely different deal. The Ravens have not yet done that with him. So they're starting there. Sign Ronnie Stanley. They also want to sign another free agent tackle, much lesser known name, but a name that should be a familiar one to Patriots fans because he played for the Jets. It's Morgan Moses. Solid starting caliber right tackle. Little long in the tooth? Sure. Does he play a position where you desperately need people, though? And so you're willing to take a 34-year-old guy who stays on the field for the most part and is able to give you representative play there? They could use that guy. So Ronnie Stanley, Morgan Moses, boom, right there. You get 2 free agent tackles, and your line has been solidified. If you miss on one, do you go the Alaric Jackson route? Say you miss on Ronnie Stanley, maybe you go Alaric Jackson, maybe you go Cam Robinson. Not the same level of player as Stanley, but can give you that representative play that you need so that you're not forcing a need in the first round of the draft. At receiver, I thought the plan was interesting because after addressing the offensive line, where they want to go is just take the best player available, and they would be freed up to do this. Take the best player available at 4. So that means Abdul Carter if he falls. If he doesn't, it means Travis Hunter. If he doesn't, then maybe it means Mason Graham. And Mason Graham, to me, while clearly, in my opinion, the consolation prize of that group, and maybe not a true blue chipper. I know some people might push back on me, but I just think in terms of his frame and his size, and you're going to hear Dane Brugler talk about Mason Graham as well, and maybe some of the drawbacks to taking him. He loves Mason Graham, don't get me wrong, but he just doesn't have the feel of a true top 5 pick at that position. Richard Seymour, Quinnen Williams. He's just not built that way. But he might be the best player available to the Patriots at 4. And so you're freed up because you did what you did in free agency at tackle to take a really good player there, whether it's Carter Hunter or Graham. I think you're feeling pretty good about that plan right now, still, if you're a Patriots fan. You could still work in a Cooper Kupp trade. We're talking about day 2, day 3 receivers you might be able to add. Whether it's, any one of those names that I just mentioned, Jack Betch, Jaden Higgins. Those are 2 names that the 33rd team boys like. And then if you're looking at it and saying, well, that sounds good, but don't they have a number of other holes like pass rush? And well, yeah, those might be other places where on top of Stanley, on top of Moses in free agency, now you're going to more that middle tier class and you're talking about Malcolm Kuntz, who might be the best pure pass rusher outside of the really big names, the Khalil Macks, Chase Young when healthy, although who knows if that's ever going to happen again. Malcolm Kuntz might be the next best guy. And so if you come away with a free agent haul of Stanley and Moses, as well as Malcolm Kuntz, and you trade for Cooper Kupp, and you've drafted Travis Hunter or Mason Graham, and then you've taken another receiver in the second round, maybe you don't need one if you have Travis Hunter and you're going to encourage him to play receiver full-time. But that to me is not a bad plan right there. But notice where they started. This is where the Patriots should start as well, in my opinion. They started a tackle in free agency. And it's not too, long-term answers. It's a couple of Band-Aids, but they might be pretty damn effective Band-Aids. And that's something that could end up allowing the Patriots to take leaps and bounds in terms of their overall organizational improvement. All right, let's get to our conversation with the Athletics' Dane Brugler. Right now, you're going to hear him rattle off all kinds of names. Defensive tackles, offensive linemen, receivers. Great conversation, as it always is in Indianapolis with the great Dane Brugler. And I also just want to mention, as we have that conversation, keep this in mind because news broke just a little while ago that the Patriots, according to NFL media, are going to allow Devon Godchaux to seek a trade. That to me is indicative of a scheme change here in New England. Okay. I think they're going to want to at least try to be a little bit more of a penetrating front, whereas Devon Godchaux is that classic two-gapping, space-eating, first and second down kind of defensive tackle. If they want to get a little quicker, a little more explosive, a little bit more aggressive on the interior there, we're going to have some names for you in a podcast very, very soon. But you're also going to hear Dane mention one name, Tyleik Williams from Ohio State, who to me would be an interesting option. Ohio State guy. Mike Vrabel's an Ohio State guy. Has the potential and has the ceiling maybe to do a little bit more than a Devon Godchaux and just be that pure run plugger, although that looks like his strength right now. So you're going to hear that name again and many, many more from Dane Brugler. A lot of fun chatting with him, as always. Get a load of that conversation right here, right now.
Here right now with the king of the combine, Dane Brugler of The Athletic, one of the best in the business when it comes to talking draft and all things prospects. Friend of the show many times over. Thanks for being with us again, man.
Anytime. How's your week going?
Long days. Brain's not quite firing the
Yep.
way that it typically does,
Nope.
but that's okay. We know that's coming
All right.
as soon as you get to Indianapolis, and it has been a lot of fun. There is actually a little bit of excitement right now for the Patriots because, people are excited about Mike Vrabel.
Yeah.
People want to see how they build moving forward. People are seemingly excited about Drake May.
Top 5 pick.
Top 5 pick,
Yeah.
a lot of cap.
Yep.
So they should be movers and shakers
Right.
this offseason. We will see if they will be. We have a fun segment that I want to drop on you now, Dane, that I thought about on the way over to the convention center here today. And this will just tell you how my brain is working right now, a couple days in. We're going to call this segment Brugler's Best Blue-Collar Ballers.
Okay.
All right?
That works. Trademark.
You have so many names swimming around in that
Yeah.
gigantic brain of yours. Because Mike Vrabel is who he is, and because we think they're going to build this team a certain way,
Right.
it's going to have a blue-collar, we think, kind of attitude.
Right.
Are there guys that when you think blue-collar, you think toughness,
Yep.
that stand out to you as potential fits for the Patriots?
Well, let's start at the top with that 4th overall pick, and gotta say Will Campbell from LSU, obviously. He's a guy that from the moment he showed up in Baton Rouge as an 18-year-old freshman, he was a little bit different. The way he's wired, he grew up same town as Andrew Whitworth, so he kind of grew up modeling his game after Andrew, and you saw it as a freshman, and then you saw it just get better and better and better, and he's going to get compared to a lot of lighter athletic tackles. This dude is physical. Like he is, Jake Matthews, Bernard Raymond, those guys, those fit when you talk about maybe the body type and the athleticism, but he is so much more physical than those guys are. So when you factor in the toughness, I think Will Campbell definitely checks that box.
Before we get to other blue-collar ballers, where do you stand on his positional fit? Does he need to hit 33 inches in terms of the arm length? That we're still waiting on those numbers as we're here today. But does he need to get there to be considered a tackle in your mind? Because I think there are people in the New England area who are looking at him saying, Patriots need offensive line help.
Sure.
He's the best offensive lineman. He played tackle at LSU
Right.
against guys in the SEC. Can they just draft this guy and just throw him on the roster and just forget about it for the next 10 years? Do you feel that way, or is he a guard, potentially?
The tape says he's a tackle, plain and simple. I mean, the last 30 games at LSU, he gave up 2 sacks. So playing left tackle in the SEC, playing for an offense that had no run game, so everybody knew they're dropping back and passing. And so you watch the A&M tape, you watch Arkansas, those guys are just pitting their ears back and going after it. So did it look perfect all the time? No, but he has far more good tape than bad tape. I get the argument when you talk about arm length. Arm length matters, it does. But what matters more, the feet and the way you use your hands. And that's where Will Campbell is outstanding, and he can compensate. It'll be interesting to see what his arm length is here. As long as he hits that 33 threshold, I think he'll be fine. I think teams want 34, 35, but they're okay with 33 as long as it shows up on tape that, hey, you can play the position. So I think he's going to be a tackle, and teams want to keep him at tackle. Talking to teams coming into, because teams get together, they put together a preliminary board. Will Campbell is a tackle on their board with guard flexibility if they want to move him.
It's really interesting. Do you think he's, you talk about the athleticism that he has, even though he is a blue-collar guy.
Yep.
Is he going to blow away the tests, do you think, in terms of, I know one number for tackles, and I think offensive line in general, and I want to credit, I believe, Nate Tice, your former colleague at The Athletic, for sort of highlighting this and just looking at the short shuttle specifically when it comes to offensive linemen. And we've seen in New England guys like Joe Thuney be fantastic when it came to change of direction. Now, obviously, he was a guard, so maybe not the perfect name to bring up right now. But is Campbell going to be so good in some of these other areas that people might look at the shorter arms and say, it doesn't really matter because look how well this guy moves, and he just proved it with the numbers that he put up in Indy.
Yeah, and I don't know we're going to come away saying, oh, he was the best tester here, but he should be good enough, right? I mean, he should hit the thresholds, and that's for a guy like that who has such good tape, just about hitting the thresholds, making sure you're athletic enough, you're long enough, it does match up with the tape. And so tape says he's a good athlete. We'll see if the numbers back that up.
Okay, blue-collar ballers.
Yeah.
Who else you got in mind?
Let's go with...
I appreciate you not laughing every time I say that, by the way, Dane.
No.
Very professional of you.
I need to trademark it. Third round, Miles Frazier, LSU guard.
Another LSU lineman.
Exactly.
Okay.
We're sticking with the theme here. Actually, just talking with Eric Gregory, an Arkansas defensive lineman, asked him straight up. Someone asked him, who's the toughest guy you went up against? He said Frazier. He said he's different. He's from start to finish. You could tell he's just wired differently. He plays differently. The play demeanor, the competitiveness. And so we saw that at the Senior Bowl. He was outstanding during the week. He's not a guy that's going to, I think, blow you away with maybe some of the testing, some of the movement stuff, but he gets the job done. He finishes the mission. And so the toughness factor, the power that he plays with, sometimes it's a little bit out of control, but he likes to play physical, likes to play tough. I think if you're looking to upgrade on the offensive line, there's a couple guys on this LSU offensive line that I think will make a lot of sense for the Patriots.
That's really interesting. So for the people out there, when you're watching Will Campbell, feel free to watch Frazier as well.
Guard.
And it's first name?
Miles
Frazier.
Yeah.
Okay, right guard. We'll keep an eye on him as well. I know this is supposed to be Dane. I've read you and heard you describe this defensive line class as really probably like the strength of the draft class.
Yep.
Are there guys that may not be as flashy as some others, or we'll take flash too, as long as they, in your opinion, fit this blue collar theme that we're trying to attack right now? Because again, I think that's what Mike Vrabel's going to be looking for. For instance, Mike Vrabel had, I'm going to say Jeffrey Simmons, Josh Simmons, draft brain, Josh Simmons, tackle for Ohio State. Vrabel did not have him. He had Jeffrey Simmons in Tennessee, who could be a big-time disruptor on the interior, but also would be considered a tough guy. And so, is there a Simmons comp, or is there somebody else on that side of the ball that you think about when you think about toughness?
Well, hey, you mentioned Ohio State. Let's stick with their defensive line. Tyleik Williams, arguably the best run-defending defensive tackle in this class. So if you're looking for flash and sizzle, he might not have that unless you really love run defense, because that's where he stack, shed, really good with his eyes. He's really impressive. Alfred Collins from Texas, 6'5.5", 325 pounds. The arms are almost 36 inches. Just a gigantic dude. And another guy, maybe not the most rangy in terms of pass rusher, but he's so good against the run. He holds the point of attack. He has instincts, awareness. He understands play design, what the blockers are trying to do to him. And then he just has the physical traits where he is going to overwhelm you at the point of attack, make the tackle. So both, I think, Collins, Tyleik Williams, maybe they sneak into the first, but more likely early second. Both those guys, I think, fit what you're describing.
Yeah, Alfred Collins is becoming a Next Pats podcast favorite here, Dane, because they really need to drastically improve their run defense based on where they were near the bottom of the league in basically every run defense category last year. And he looks like, his body type looks pretty rare in terms of the size, the height, the length, the bulk. He's not Richard Seymour. Nobody's Richard Seymour.
No.
And he's not going to have that kind of juice as a pass rusher.
Right.
But even if he can be like poor man's Richard Seymour on first and second down, would Mike Vrabel, Seymour's old teammate, not look at that and say, I can figure out a way to use that guy, and even coach him up and maybe get even a little bit more? I think he was a 5-star recruit at one point.
Yeah,
maybe get a little bit more out of his ability.
And you mentioned Simmons from Tennessee, and it's hard to find those guys. But with Collins, you at least, not many guys that look like that are walking around this earth. So you get the talent, the traits, And yeah, last year wasn't even a starter, playing behind Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. But there wasn't a huge drop-off this year for Texas in the middle of that defensive line because of Broughton and then Alfred Collins. And so he really had a chance this year to break out. And I wouldn't be surprised if he snuck into that first round because, again, there are just not many guys that look like that. And the NFL is a big man league. It's a traits league, and Alfred Collins has a lot of that.
I want to ask you about Mason Graham.
Yeah.
Talking about Simmons, I'm thinking, interior disruptor, hard-nosed guy. Like, any similarities there? Because I know in terms of, we're talking about length a lot on this podcast episode today. He's probably not the longest guy in the world, but is he somebody that you could see Mike Vrabel looking at with that 4th overall pick, start of a new regime, looking at him and saying, I know he went to Michigan. I'm an Ohio State guy, but I'll swallow hard because that's going to be a statement pick for my program in terms of what I'm looking for from our best players.
Right, and there's a lot about Mason Graham that maybe doesn't truly blow you away as a top 5 pick. The length's not great, the body's okay. Like, he's not Quinnen Williams, and that's what I think of when I think of a top 5 defensive tackle. But he is a leverage monster, and no surprise, state champion wrestler in high school, 5-sport player in high school. It's just when I study defensive tackles, I want to see your block deconstruction. How do you do it? How fast do you do it? And can you make the play? Mason Graham does it at a high level. It's quick. It's powerful. He understands where the ball's going. So that block deconstruction really stands out.
All right, so we've got Mason Graham. We've got Alfred Collins. We've got Tyleik Williams. We've got 2 LSU offensive linemen. I think we've got a pretty well-rounded blue-collar baller. Brugler's best blue-collar baller. Throw it on a T-shirt. Lineup. I want to ask you about one not necessarily blue-collar position before you go.
Okay.
That's wide receiver.
Yeah.
That's sort of the the body beautiful, maybe a little bit more maintenance involved there with at least oftentimes the best of the best. Is there somebody in this draft class, Dane, that you could see, and it sounds like it's not, in terms of high-end talent there, it's not going to be the world's greatest draft class. But is there somebody on day 2, if they do get somebody in the trenches on day 1, is there somebody on day 2 that you look at and say, I understand why he's not going to be a first-round pick, but I also wouldn't be stunned if he ends up being a go-to guy for somebody's passing game in the very near future? Is there a name like that stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for more of an outside player, I think Trey Harris from Ole Miss could be that guy. I don't think he's funny. He was actually Malik Neighbors' quarterback in high school. So this is a guy that's still learning the wide receiver position in a way. But he is not going to blow by corners, but he's really physical. He catches well at the catch point. And you just watch him on the Ole Miss tape, and it's like, okay, he doesn't look fast, but guys are having a tough time covering him. And he can do a little bit after the catch as well. So I think Trey Harris, he was banged up this year. I mean, he had an outstanding September, and then in October, then he got hurt, which I think kind of maybe derailed how we talk about him as a prospect. But he's a top 75 pick. I don't know if he's working out here, but hopefully at the pro day. So he's definitely a guy. And then if you want more of an inside player, inside-outside versatility, Ja'Lynn Polk from Iowa State, who he should test well, should be low 4.4s, maybe 4.3s. For a guy that's not very big, 5'9.5", 195 pounds, he is a big target because he catches everything. Catches well outside his frame. He can win vertically. He can win short and be a threat with the run after the catch. Big fan of Noel. I think he's too good to not have some type of production, some type of role at the NFL level. 2
really good names there. Harris is particularly interesting to me because you mentioned, and by the way, folks, you know this by now if you're listening to this podcast where we talk so much draft and we reference Dane's work so much. But the Beast is where you're going to find all these interesting tidbits, like Trey Harris was Malik Neighbors' quarterback in high school, or Mason Graham was a 5-sport athlete. I don't even know how you do that in high school, but he was a 5-sport athlete in high school. But the quarterback thing is interesting to me. Josh McDaniels is back in New England. He made it work with Jacoby Myers, former quarterback. Julian Edelman, former quarterback. He wants smart guys at receiver. And if you have that quarterback background, maybe that's a good sign for Trey Harris and a potential fit with the Patriots there. He also played at Ole Miss, where Joe Judge resides currently still and was there last year.
Look at you connecting dots.
I'm connecting dots. I feel like Charlie Day with the corkboard and the yarn. But I really am, now that these pieces are coming together and you could get a character reference on, and not that it sounds like there's anything that they would maybe have issues with when it comes to that, but just to have that background from Judge. If you're Josh McDaniels, call him up. What do you think of this kid? Would he work with us?
Yeah.
Is he going to be able to take hard coaching? Josh is that kind of guy.
Right.
That could be really interesting fit moving forward? We don't throw him in the blue-collar baller list unless you really want to.
No, I mean he could. There's
No, that's a no. That's a no.
What-
It's got to be emphatic. You got to be able to stamp these guys with the blue collar. If we want this thing to catch on, Dane.
One more.
Oh, you got another one.
Noah Williams, corner from Cal.
Oh.
This guy is fun to watch. I think he's a lot on the line this week for him at the 40.
Okay.
Yeah, corner's a stopwatch position.
Yeah.
He needs to run lower than a 4.5, like 2. All right. If he can get under there, I think he's going to be okay. I'm a little worried he might not.
Yeah.
But this guy mixes it up. He loves to get physical. Watch the Stanford tape against Ayo Minor. Those guys battled the entire time. He put him on the ground more than a few times.
Eric Amanor, maybe second round type of
Day 2.
receiver at
Yeah.
Stanford. Okay.
Yeah. Big, physical guy. But Williams will not be out physical. He will not take any stuff from a receiver. And it shows up on tape, and it shows up in his coverage. And I think it's when he gets to the NFL, he's going to look to make a statement early. And so Noah Williams, if we're talking just that hard nose, I'm going to grind it out with you and, get 4 quarters, make it tough for you to produce. Noah Williams does that.
Not typically thought to be a blue-collar type of position,
Right.
but when you have those guys, Bill Belichick used to love those guys. He was looking for tacklers at corner all the time, and so I wonder if Mike Vrabel will have a similar approach at that position. Dane Brugler, phenomenal stuff. Brugler's best blue-collar ballers right here on the Next Pats podcast. You're a champion, absolute Iron Man during Combine Week. We appreciate your time, buddy.
Anytime, thanks.
Great stuff there from Dane. Really appreciate him spending some time with us. Appreciate you for spending some time with us as well. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe as well. Leave us a comment in the comment section. Tell us, which day 2 receiver do you want? Which parts of the 33rd team's $100 million plan to fix the Patriots did you love? Did you hate? Let us know in the comment section. I'm always trying to mix it up in there. It's been a busy week this week, so it might take a day or two, but we'll make sure we are in there going back and forth with you all. Always love to do that on YouTube. We appreciate you. We appreciate our audio listeners as well. Apple Podcasts, rate, comment, subscribe. If you could, please, please, please. Helps the podcast so much as we are in this incredibly busy and exhilarating and exciting time. I'm having a blast doing these podcasts straight from Indianapolis from the Combine. We'll have another one for you very, very soon because we've got more fantastic guests who give us more fantastic insight into all these prospects that you want to learn so much about. I know, because you're a sicko, just like me. Admit it. We'll talk to you very soon.